allegiance to the flag of the
United States of America,
and to the republic
for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Tammy, I assume you have the roll?
I do, thank you.
Okay. I'd like to move have the approval of the agenda moved.
I approve the agenda.
Second?
And a second. Any discussion? It moves. It's approved. Approval of the minutes of 9/20/21.
That's fine.
I'll move them.
Second.
In a second.
Second.
Any corrections or anything on them?
That's right.
Okay, those are approved. Anybody here for open forum? All right. Moving on to item number 7, we're already up to presentations, the East Point Douglas Road pedestrian crossings and safety, and we'll start with Ryan.
Good evening, Mr. Chair, members of the commission. So for this item tonight, we have Jared Juth. He's our graduate engineer with the city of Cottage Grove. He's been here, started back in, I think, May or June, so a little less than a year he's been with us. And he'll be talking about the East Point Douglas Road pedestrian crossing and safety improvements. He'll talk through, what we've been looking at and kind of how this came to be, and why we're doing the additional review in this area. So with that, I'll pass it over to Jared to run through his presentation.
Mr. Chair, members of the commission, thanks for having me here today. I'm Jared Juth, graduate engineer, like Ryan said. I came to talk about the East Point Douglas pedestrian improvements. We've been reviewing some of the pedestrian accessibility in the area between Hy-Vee, the stop sign by Hy-Vee, and Jamaica Avenue. Some of these options include adding additional and extending sidewalk, as well as some crosswalks. Given the recent fatality here and requests for improvements, we've looked at 3 different options that will hopefully improve safety in the corridor for pedestrians, as well as provide some additional mobility. So first, want to look a little bit at the existing conditions of this specific segment of East Point Douglas. So right now, the only marked crosswalks for pedestrians are at the stop sign that's adjacent to the Arby's in the Speedway station and at Jamaica Avenue, which are over 1.5 miles apart. So between Ideal Avenue and Jamaica Avenue, the traffic has stayed pretty consistent actually over the past 20 years or so at about 6,000 vehicles per day. And for a little context, it's about 8,000 per day by the Hy-Vee. And so for existing sidewalk and trail in the area, as you're probably well aware, there is the bituminous trail that extends the entire south side length of this segment. That was redone in 2018, along with all the pedestrian ramps at the cross streets. And the sidewalk on the north side, where we're focusing on, is kind of few and far between. It exists from the Hy-Vee to Hillside Trail, and then in a couple areas by 90th Street, which I'll talk about a little bit more. So we kind of came up.
Excuse me a second, if I could just interrupt.
Yep.
Is there any other sections besides the, in front of the pet hospital that doesn't have sidewalk between the school building and Jamaica? Or is that the only spot that doesn't have a sidewalk right now?
There's no sidewalk from the school building to Jamaica.
Okay.
So the 3 options that we kind of came up with that can be done on their own or with any of the other options are listed here, and I'll talk about each of them individually. So the first one is just installing sidewalk, making that connection at the address 8136 East Point Douglas, which is the Cottage Grove Animal Hospital. The second option is a crosswalk at 90th Street with potential enhancements such as a rapid flashing beacon. And then lastly, the third option is this full sidewalk installation along the north side, all the way from Hillside to Inwood Ave, just west of Jamaica. And that would also include pedestrian ramps at cross streets and opportunity for additional marked crosswalks. So the first option here that I mentioned is just a sidewalk connection, roughly 250 to 300 feet of 6 foot wide sidewalk. So this is, like I mentioned, the Cottage Grove Animal Hospital. In 2019, the city installed sidewalk from 90th Street to the entrance of the cottages of Cottage Grove, as you can see just south of that yellow oval there. And then there's also sidewalk you can see north of the oval, which is Grove Ridge Apartments. And right now there's just a dead end between the two. So this connection could really help the pedestrians in the area get all the way from Ingsburg to 90th, which has trail that extends all the way to Jamaica. And the engineer's estimate that we came up with for everything included in this option is roughly $14,000.
Jared, if I may, what does that include, the 14,000? Is that a permanent sidewalk we're putting in, or just a temporary, or?
So that would be permanent sidewalk, 6 feet wide, 6 inches thick, including pedestrian ramps at that parking lot entrance. And that includes everything else with the associated construction costs.
Okay.
So going into the second option here, this is a table from the Minnesota Traffic Engineering Manual, and it just kind of gives guidelines for installing crosswalks based on the traffic volume and road type. And for this section of East Point Douglas, all the guidelines would suggest the A treatment, which is listed here. It suggests that a standard marked crosswalk with signage would be sufficient in this area. However, we're suggesting that rapid flashing beacon, although it goes above and beyond the guidelines here, it's been shown to be very successful with pedestrian safety and kind of these lower speed, lower volume roadways. And according to MnDOT, actually in the past several years, the driver compliance for the rapid flashing beacons that you've probably seen around town has been as high as 98% and has reduced pedestrian involved crashes by 47%.
And how many of those do we have in town?
Ryan, are you sure on that?
Right now, we have 3 of those in town. So we have them on 90th by Woodridge Park, we have them on 80th Street by Joliet, and then one on Hinton Avenue between 80th and 70th.
Okay, I couldn't place the one on Joliet, but okay.
Yep, that's the newest one that we put in with, it was an older style, kind of flasher before, but with the 80th Street project, we put that one in 2 years ago.
So a little bit more about this potential crosswalk. So we've been kind of keying in on the intersection with 90th Street there, just because, like we mentioned, the relatively low traffic volume in this segment and also the pedestrian ramps on both sides of the road with that newly completed sidewalk at 90th at the cottages of Cottage Grove. So just for context of price here, rectangular rapid flashing beacon, which is pictured on the bottom, are priced at around $20,000 for the solar powered flashes, which I know we've installed, as Ryan said, for each side of the intersection. And a standard marked crosswalk, I guess it really depends on the area, but they are on average about $3,000. So then lastly, the third and most extensive option for pedestrian improvements would be sidewalk and ped ramps along the entirety of the north side of East Point Douglas, from Hillside Trail to Inwood, which, as I mentioned, is just west of Jamaica. So just because of the cost of this, it would typically be done with a full road reconstruct or a much bigger project just to reduce the costs. It would require quite a bit of tree and landscape removal and replacement because of all the homes along that stretch of East Point Douglas. Several driveways would also require partial replacement to match the sidewalk cross slope for ADA guidelines. And right now, we have the estimate for this stretch of sidewalk at about $232,000. And I guess also for this one, there would be options to install marked crosswalks at any or each of the cross streets. So today we're asking that the commission receives information and will provide further recommendations to city staff for more review and implementation of some pedestrian facilities on this segment of East Point Douglas.
Okay. Well, I've got a bunch of questions. Does anybody else want to have anything they want to ask before I jump in? And I might be there a while.
Go figure, right?
Anybody at all?
Go ahead.
Okay. When is the proposed reconstruct of Point Douglas
So
on that side?
Ryan,
That one I can answer. So right now, it is kind of broken into phases, but it is between 2024 and 2025 would be the reconstruct date.
Starting from what direction to what direction?
Right now, we have the south east kind of portion towards Jamaica first, tied with that neighborhood, and then the northwest portion second.
Okay, thank you. Here's my thought pattern on this. If we're 1 to 2 years, maybe 3 years, maybe even 4 years out on a full replacement, which at that time I think would be very prudent to go ahead and put sidewalk in the entire way, even though we already have one on the other side, just due to the traffic that's there. I'm in favor of actually two different things. One is putting the RRFB in, and also doing that sidewalk, but doing it temporary with blacktop. So it can be removed and done permanently when it's all done, because I would hate to spend that money now, and if anything changes, then it has to be torn out of something that's permanent, where the city staff can probably do the temporary in front of the animal hospital there and get that completed. And obviously, we have to do the ADA ramps, and then we'll get those done. But that would be my recommendation, would be on this, is to do the both of them. I like those RRFBs. I mean, it does get your attention, there's no doubt about it. And I know with me, like if I'm coming down Hinton, I'm always, first time you ever see it, it scares the heck out of you. But once you see it, every time you get close to it, you kind of wait for it. And I guess I've got a question for the police. What is our, do you have any statistics on injuries, accidents at those before and after they were installed? Has it made a big difference as far as public safety goes?
It's a good question. I don't have the statistics for that, but I can tell you that they do make a difference. I mean, they slow vehicles down, though. The one we see the most often is by Woodridge Park, where people come down that hill at a pretty good clip. And when those lights start flashing, that does bring the speeds down of the cars. But I can't recall any accidents since they've been up at any of those locations with pedestrian accidents, so. But that's off the top of my head, and it's rather thin, so.
Okay. Anybody have anything they want to add?
Yeah,
Ron?
Steve, I agree with what you were saying. I like that idea. I like the first two proposals with the flashers. I live off of 90th, and that ever since we put that by Woodridge is awesome. I've seen more and more people slowing down, and especially in the climates that we have, and we have shorter daylight, especially this time of year, it certainly helps for all those walkers out there. I like the idea of doing the asphalt first, if we're gonna reconstruct East Point Douglas. I guess my question more about, why do we need sidewalks on both sides? Because I think of 90th right now, we're walking down one side, we cross over and we go down, and we didn't put sidewalks down those residential houses there on 90th. I don't see the value, I guess, right now. And I know you're gonna have homeowners probably a little upset why would they want sidewalks in their front yard? Or maybe they do, I don't know, but I think that has to be a consideration, is going to be what those residents, because to me, having that sidewalk on the other side, on the 61 side, there's nothing that protrudes us for. We can make a nice sidewalk there. I think we got good enough crossings. If we have enough crossings with the signs, I think that would be a way to be prudent with funding. That's kind of my thoughts.
Yeah, one thing I'll just add to that, if we ever did do something like that full sidewalk, it would definitely be a pretty heavily public engagement project. We certainly would do neighborhood meetings, because really it would be there for them, for the most part, you know, for those homes that are on East Point and have to walk on East Point to go one way or another. If there wasn't interest, or if for some reason that wasn't the route to go at the time of the East Point Douglas reconstruction, another option is doing just ped ramps at the corners to kind of give a spot for pedestrians to kind of have a place to wait off the road, and then still having marked crosswalks. We'd have some options we could look at, but you're right, we would definitely have to work with those residents to see if they'd have interest or not, because they would be the kind of the primary users of it.
They would probably say no in the wintertime because they'd have to clean out that section between the sidewalk and the street when the plows go by.
Well, I think the city, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the city plows any sidewalk that's in the public right of way now, correct?
We do, that's correct. Yep,
Yeah,
yep.
they plow it, but there's that section that the big plow comes and leaves a big drift there that don't get plowed.
Well, that's why the contractors push it back out in the street, so it gets pushed.
The homeowner,
No, is there any cost analysis on that, or is this just something that was not looked at, or is it kind of into the scheme of things? Because I see 3 proposals here, and now I just kind of hear that maybe a 4th, and I kind of thought that would be kind of the way to go to start with, but with the proposals that were here, I just assumed that the scheme of things was that eventually you wanted to put in a complete sidewalk, and you know, as we get older and our community gets older and our population gets older, some of you get older anyway, right, Bob? I can see this, you know, especially with the cottages being there. I mean, you know, it's a senior 55 and over housing thing, you know. People don't want to walk across the street to go for a walk. They want to walk on their side, and I don't know the what happened as far as where this person was crossing or what have you, but my guess is it was probably an elderly person. If it was by the cottages there, and I'm guessing they probably crossed in the middle of the street because they came to the end there. So, I mean, I like the idea of that sidewalk, and I guess my other question would be then is that if we were to do with just the permanent concrete like you're talking for that one section, would that change? What's the probability of it changing when you go to do the full reconstruct?
Yeah, in terms of the permanent section, if we had to do it now, it would be on the back of curb for sure, just given the kind of constraints in the right of way. Ideally, you have a little bit of separation, a little bit of boulevard, which we would try to get with the reconstruction project. We'd probably have to get some sidewalk easement from the animal hospital. Probably the biggest risk is the curb is in pretty good shape actually along there, surprisingly, but any curb replacement would end up having to rip out sections of sidewalk too. So there is a risk of, you know, damaging and having to replace that sidewalk with the reconstruct.
So doing a temporary blacktop may be a short-term solution to a long-term problem then for right now.
It definitely could be something we should look at, so,
Okay.
for sure.
Anybody have any other questions? What are you looking for from us tonight? Have we given you enough, or do you need a recommendation of some sort, or?
I think if you want to do like a formal recommendation on those 2 options, that kind of gives us clear direction, and we can work, you know, through budgeting and see how those can fit into our programs, so.
Well, I kind of like the two that to begin with, and I like Ron's idea too of at the intersections, put stripe it and paint it for pedestrian crosses. So to me, there's actually kind of 4 options on the floor. I would make a recommendation that we do a temporary sidewalk by the animal hospital with that RRFB, and have staff also look at painting up the crosswalks on all the intersections going down there to get over to the bituminous permanent sidewalk that's already got the ramps. Because those have all got the ramps built into them, right?
That's correct,
Okay.
yep, the ramps
So
are there
that would be
today.
that's my recommendation,
I'd second
my
that.
motion. And the second. Any further discussion with this? Kent?
I think that makes the most sense from a money perspective, and it gives you some of that safety that you're looking for to get people, till we can do something more with that section of road. So I think that makes a lot of sense.
Anything else from anybody?
Are you referring to crosswalks at every road? So if we're going, I'll call it north, but it's really not north. You're talking Ideal, Hyde, East Point Douglas Court, Harkness. I mean,
I'm
there's
thinking-
probably what, 8 or 10
Probably.
between Hillside and 90th Street. By statute, they have the right-of-way, a pedestrian has a right-of-way without a marked crosswalk at any intersection by statute. But I can't speak to Ryan, but that seems like a lot of marking that we don't have in other areas of the community at every intersection, like 90th Street, for example, where Commissioner Kath is. There's the couple main ones, really, is the ones we paint. But I can't speak to it. I agree that it'd be helpful, but maybe you pick one or two, or, your Hyde where it's a stop sign, so it's a little bit easier, and
I think what we could do as well is maybe review the pedestrians that are in those areas, and maybe there's some key streets as we do further analysis, like Hillside Trail, one that's maybe a little bit busier. That's something we could look at if we didn't want to do, every street crossing.
I'm real okay with that. I forgot about the little eyebrow that's in there. Obviously, we don't want to, we shouldn't put one there, but I think we can leave that up to our professional staff to disentangle that as far as which ones they should and shouldn't do. So I guess I will amend my motion to the first two, so number 1 and number 2, with doing a temporary blacktop, and give the city staff discretion if they deem necessary to get other ones that already have the pedestrian ramps on the, I guess you call it the west side of Point Douglas, their discretion whether it needs to be marked out for a crosswalk.
And since I second, I'll second again for the amended
I'll
motion.
second the second.
All right.
And then just the last bit from the PD side, Hillside Trail is where the speeds really start to accelerate, right when the road opens up there. So if we're gonna move forward, we progress, I think, then you would wanna put that crosswalk type RR, whatever you said they were, super rapid.
RRFB.
Those things,
I
right?
cheated, I wrote it down.
Because it gets really wide in those locations, then you got a center area. So you got you got a good jaunt between Hillside and all the way across. You gotta be moving at a good clip. So that would be my only thing on public safety side, where I see the speeds increases right by the car dealership. They really start to skyrocket. That stays 30, but I can just tell you from 28 years, it's 30 ends right when you get out of the residential area and the speeds pick up there, so.
Do we need to make another motion on that, or can we just leave that to the discretion?
We can
If it
review
needs to-
that,
If
yep.
it needs to come back, we can.
I think when we
bring it
redo the
back.
road, that would be the major point in time that you would really look at that.
Yep. Oh, should be good.
All right, any further discussion? All those in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The motion carries.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you,
and
Jared.
Commission. Thank you.
Owen, welcome aboard, even though you've been here since May. New business, we have none. Old business, we have none. We have no responses. Ryan, is this where we want to jump in, or do we want to do it between commission comments and the staff updates?
Yeah, we can do it after commission comments. So.
Okay, any comments or requests from anybody? None? Staff updates and reports. I think at this time, I'd like to ask Mr. Bob Campbell and Mr. Kent Griffith to meet with Ryan and Justin out in the front.
You're gonna be special again.
Special.
Probably.
Glad you wore your fast shoes today, so you can get up there.
Almost looks like a beer can instead of sit up.
With your guys' last night on the commission after, many years of service, and I think both on previous Public Works and public safety commissions. We wanted to have a little something in your guys' honor, something that we can take home, because like I said, after many years of service, our sign department, very creative folks. They came up with some street signs. That's what we like to do down in Public Works for all sorts of things. So that'd be great for you guys. Like I said, it's been great work that you've done on the commission, and we're definitely gonna miss you. You got big shoes to fill. So we've got a couple signs here. One for Bob. There you go.
Thank you.
All right, Ken,
All right.
there you go.
Thank you.
Thanks. Thank you, gentlemen. Don't go yet. We're gonna give you a little more accolades before you go.
Give you a check now.
Yep, right, the big check, right. I think Orloff's got that somewhere, yeah. First of all, I wanted to just say thank you. It's really a pleasure that I got to be here tonight for this. I'm very excited that I was assigned to this commission, and really enjoy working with all of the members of the commission. But you two gentlemen have contributed so much in your time as members of the commission, in addition to other duties, with the city of Cottage Grove. I know, Bob, you had a very long and illustrious career with our Public Works Department, and we appreciate all the hard work and effort that you've done and you continue to do. And of course, Kent, your work with our public safety professionals, first responders, EMS, et cetera. So not only are you giving of yourself in your professional capacity, but you're also giving of yourself with your personal time. And this little token of appreciation is just to say thank you so much for all that you've done. But I want to remind you that after a year, you're able to apply to join the commission again. So, that time will go pretty quickly, I'm sure. And you'll be sitting at home on a Monday night wondering, what am I going to do with my time? Just remember that, we would love to have you back after you take a little break and rest up a little bit, okay? Thank you. All right.
Yeah, it gives me his wife pleasure, because Cotton, finally used to not waking up at 3 in the morning and going plow.
There you go.
After so many years.
Tell me about
Wanted to, I'm sure.
it. I don't miss that one bit, Steve.
They still give me a
40 years,
hard time, guys.
40 years of doing it, I don't miss it.
Yeah, they do. So let's give these guys a round of applause.
Yeah, 40 years, I left at 8 o'clock at night and didn't get home till 10 o'clock next morning. I know. That got old.
I'll help you hang them in your garage.
Well, yeah, okay.
Put that alongside your beer fridge.
That's right.
Well, congratulations, you two.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So, along
Thank
with the retirement tonight, I hope you enjoy the pension that comes with it.
Yes.
Did you get that big check too?
All right, moving right along, staff
I get my
updates and
street
reports.
plowed at
Public Works?
6:30 in the morning.
Yeah, I'll kick it off here with some of our different engineering and public works updates. Obviously, in the middle of winter, I'll let Gary, he's gonna give some updates on plowing and what the streets division's doing. But we are still, pretty busy with everything else going on with the utility division, especially Rick Alt involved with this. We are working on our 3M settlement agreement projects. So that'll be our 2 new treatment plants, new city well, and some other neighborhood connection projects that we'll be doing, fully funded by the state through that 3M funding for PFAS because of our contamination in town. So we're really working through the preliminary design of both of our treatment plants. One of them is going to be behind the central fire station, and one will be down just kind of south of 100th Street is the 2 locations. Looking at 2023, early 2023 to start construction on those. It's a good, year and a half design process. And the plan was wrapped up in about September of, 2022. So we really hit the ground running. We were ready to ask for money from the state to start that design. So we're working through that. We'll also have a neighborhood connection project up on Goodview Avenue by 70th Street that the state identified for connecting. There's homes on wells that have PFAS contamination. So we're working through a project in 2022 to extend water main to those neighborhoods as well.
I thought that was done a couple years ago there.
So that was Granada Avenue. Yep, Granada Avenue. Yep, right next door. So that was the easy one to check off first, and now the state's looking to us have to extend to Goodview as well. So,
Okay.
so that'll be in 2022. So pretty busy. That's a joint effort between engineering and public works and utilities and all the staff to work on those projects. So Other than that, we are still working through the East Point Douglas and Jamaica design project. That's a 2023 project as well, to redo all the signals in that area at East Point and Jamaica, and then the target signal, and then even the intersection down from that will be a big project in 2023, so.
How many times have we redesigned those signals, so?
So this will be our first big one. So we've done little things here and there, right? We've added a lane, added a turn lane, retimed signals, but this is the big one. The council's having staff do the full redo, which will be really expanding that Jamaica and East Point. Will be dual left turn lanes in every direction, really cleaning up that intersection, and then actually moving that full access, and kind of making some adjustments and having a roundabout, kind of where there's no signal today, there'd actually be a roundabout is what we're looking at for the Cub entrance and the strip center conceptually. So we're working through that right now. So, but that's a big project. So that would be a 2023 project because it's another good year of design and right away and things like that. So a couple of big projects coming in the chute for 2023. The only other update I'll mention, because I'll let Gary really talk about the plowing, is I'm the weather guy, so I like weather and I like snow, and we're actually in Cottage Grove just over 40 inches of snow now for the year. You wouldn't know it because there's not much on the ground because it keeps melting, but the average to the end of January is 30 inches, so we're a little over 10 inches above average right now, which you maybe, I said, wouldn't know, but it's been a busy year for the guys and lots of time in the trucks and lots of salt. So with that, I'll turn over to Gary for streets.
Just before Gary starts, I'd just like you to know, I'd like to get 17 more inches because I may or may not be in a pool that says I win at 57, but I may or may not be in that.
That 17 inches was a lot.
Well, good evening. Yeah, so as Ryan said, it's been a challenging year. So far to date, we've been out 22 times, and like these last 3 storms, most of them have been, other than the very first one, it's been only a couple inches, but it's been extremely cold, so we've had to use some treated salt, but we've kept the roads in pretty good condition throughout. Besides that, we've been removing boulevard trees. We're up to 80 trees so far. We are trimming trees, and today, with the warm weather, brings on potholes, so we were out actually pothole patching today too. Starting tomorrow, we're going to be interviewing for the forester interns. We've had 5 good candidates already, so we're going to start interviews earlier than normal, just because we want to try landing them before someone else gets them. So, been mixing a lot of treated salt up. We've been using Ice Be Gone Magic again. We've been having really good success with that.
With what, I'm sorry?
It's Ice Be Gone Magic, so that's what gives it that brown tinge to the salt.
What does that consist of, Gary?
What's that?
What kind of salt mixture is it then?
Well, it's got some alcohol into it, magnesium chloride,
Okay.
and we just mix it with our white salt. So
Have you been doing that on more routes this year? Because last year, I think you were experimenting with a lot of them, weren't you?
all routes have been using it when it's been below 10 degrees. We've been using it in all vehicles. Okay, and then we sent out quotes for sweeping. Been busy making and installing signs. We've lost a few from the slippery conditions here and there. I don't know if you guys have noticed, but on Indian Boulevard across from the school, we dug a 1.5 foot out of that pond, and then we're fixing some flared in sections out there. And besides that, in our ponding areas up by 70th and Hardwood, we went in quite a few of them up there and removed some brush near our flared in sections and removed some trees and some fall trees that have been on the other side. But other than that, everything keeping the vehicles running, and the newer crew, is their second year. They shine pretty good. They've kept up the streets really well, I thought.
One thing I'll add that Gary didn't mention, because he's so modest, is we saw a big cost savings with that Ice Be Gone Magic. Before that, we would get just regular magnesium chloride through state contract. It was like $140 a ton. With this, we treat it, and it's only $12 a ton to treat, and we treat our white salt, which is like $70. So we're at like $80 a ton instead of 140. So we did see a pretty significant cost savings to the city with that, and the results are just as good as that magnesium chloride. So it was a good project.
Good
Just
job.
as good, if not better, I think.
Yep.
Good job, whoever came up with it. Gary?
Yeah.
There's
We'll
a
give-
few other people involved in it.
Little research, huh?
Yeah.
Oh, your boys have did a nice job.
Yeah,
Excellent.
no, they've done really well for much newer people. It's worked out well.
So they basically have a, like over by my place over there, designate a route where they go, right?
Yeah, so there's 14 big truck routes and then 10 cul-de-sac routes, or 13 routes.
Like they do the,
Hopefully 14.
they do the heavy traveled routes first, and then they do the less traveled later then?
Yep, so we got what we call our ones and twos, 80th Street, Hinton, then would be our ones. We go out and take care of them, and then twos would bring your arterials coming out of your collector roads, out of your neighborhoods,
Yep,
and then
yep.
into the residentials after that.
Well, good job, pass it on to the team.
I'll do that, thank you.
All right, do we have anything else from Public Works? Fire service or police, whichever one wants to go first? I guess they're pointing at each other, so we'll do the fire service.
All right, just some, since we haven't met since September, I got some info. Personnel-wise, we have 3 new part-time staff getting back on right now, and we are currently down to 30 part-time staff. We have just had people leaving for different family reasons, left and right, and or job changes. So we were up at a high of about 52 part-time staff. We're down to 30. And we're probably going to end up doing a second round of hiring in the spring here. So that announcement would probably go out in May-ish timeframe. Calls for service September to December of last year. EMS, in September we had 305 calls. October we had 341. November we had 304. And December we had 360. So between September and December we had 1,310 EMS calls, and that's not only for Cottage Grove, that's our response area, so that includes Great Cloud, St. Paul Park, and Newport, and then later shared service, any calls to Woodbury, and believe it or not, we do get mutual aid calls from Alina, so we've gone to Inver Grove, we've gone to South St. Paul, we've gone to West St. Paul, and we did have 1 call to Rosemount. So we've been busy, even though COVID's doing this up and down thing, we're staying steady with calls. For fire stuff, during that time frame too, we had 67 fire rescue type calls in September, 21 in October, 49 in November, and 64 in December, for a total of 201 calls during that time frame. During that time frame too, we also responded to 4 structure fires in town between October and December. No injuries reported in any of those calls. All were pretty minor. We didn't have any complete burn downs, fairly quick responses for the staffing that we've been dealing with COVID and stuff like that, so we've been doing pretty good on that. Other items, this Saturday, February 5th, we have ice rescue training, so it's some staff getting back into the ice rescue suits, getting out into the water, practicing recoveries, getting people out of the water, and or getting into the water so people are comfortable wearing ice rescue suits. New staff that have not even experienced this before, it will be an experience for them to don these suits and then get in the water that's roughly 40 or less degrees.
Where will this be?
We generally do it in Great Cloud down
Okay.
in the, down at what's called second fill there at the causeway. It kind of depends on water level though and water flow. I just drove through there today. Water flow is pretty slow. We haven't had much reason to get a high water flow. I'm just hoping that the ice is the right thickness so they don't have to do everything from the shore.
Okay.
Let's see, we invited the Minnesota DNR to come in to do an in-house training in early January where they did a 3-hour wildland firefighting class for us. They basically explained the equipment they have available to us if we call them for any mutual aid, which we have done in the past, and it's usually along the bluffs area, along River Acres and the railroad tracks. They have tracked vehicles and their crews will come in after a call. It does take them some time, roughly about an hour or so they figure. But they can get there once it's a major knockdown and they'll relieve us from the call so we can clear, get back into doing our city stuff, and then they just take it from there. So that's kind of nice to see that. And then they did tell us that aircraft is available if we were to ever need it. So if we need to start doing water drops, if they're available, they'll come down with them. We had 6 staff members complete their Fire Instructor 1 course and state certification test. They can now assist in teaching our staff different levels of training. So whether it's fire officer 1, fire inspector 1, and stuff like that, they're all certified instructors. So we're actually saving money by not sending them out to schools. We're doing all of our schooling in-house, and we save the money that way of doing that. See, we sent a couple more staff to the train the trainer course for Blue Card, so now we have 3 certified instructors for Blue Card. I think eventually we're going to expand out and start offering classes for other agencies where we'll be able to turn a little bit of revenue for that. Not only are they, again, training our in-house staff up to par, all full-time staff and officers are now certified in Blue Card. We are now turning in 22 our attention to the non-supervisory staff, so they get maybe not certified, but they're at least through the course and know the nomenclature and what it would take if no supervisors were on scene would call, that they could run the call. And I just heard the other day that Newport Fire is interested in sending some people through a class, so I think there's might be our first city that's going to talk to us about Blue Card training for them. We probably hold that up at the Hero Center. COVID and injuries have hit the fire division pretty hard. We still have 2 full-time staff out on injuries. We've had numerous full-time and part-time staff out with COVID since Christmas, as any other business I'm sure is experiencing. And if you've heard anything in the EMS service, it's just kind of the way it was. I was vaccinated and I still got hit with it around just after the New Year's. Luckily, it was more or less like a cold for me, but it's taken some of our staff down pretty hard. And then some staff has had to call in because they've had family members sick. So scheduling's been fun, and I say that tongue in cheek, but we've been able to keep generally 2 ambulances available for service during this time. And finally, we'll be going into budget season soon, so we'll be preparing for the 23-24 budget process. And one of the major things that we're going to be looking at that time is that process is updating our vehicle replacement plans for our fire equipment. We already pretty much have a good plan for our EMS equipment, but we're going to be looking at fire and future staffing needs. That's all I have, unless anyone has any questions.
Any questions of the fire chief? Great.
See, I love following that, all the statistical data. Thank you, Rick. So the PD side, last time we spoke, we talked about the changes that we're doing within the department. I can now kind of talk about the people assigned to each one of those new divisions. So as you know, we budgeted for a community engagement officer, Officer Dan Schoen. He was Detective Dan Schoen on a rotation in investigations, and he took over the community engagement. So he'll be responsible for any of the events that occur basically with the public. So he'll be the liaison, not necessarily always doing anything. And we have a lot of Boy Scout tours, Cub Scout tours, and a lot of these just community events that occur. And he's kind of going to be the conduit, the one person. We had Gail Griffith years ago, as everyone remembers. Kent knows maybe her once or twice. I think he's met her. But she did that for years as the school resource officer. So we lost that position. So this was our opportunity to bring that position back into a full-time capacity, which I think is great. We got a grant from the federal government a couple years ago, and we added what's called a case management officer. So we always had 5 or 6 people assigned to the case management unit. So they would go and work with high call volume people that generally take more time and resources than what we have naturally available. And those people sometimes have substance, chemical, mental health issues, and or we just have an issue that comes up that's a high lethality and needs special attention, whether that's through more hands-on supervision of their movements and watching what they're doing. So this position is now 1 full-time person, and then we still have the 5 that work on opposite shifts that also work on this case management. But he's full-time, and what he's able to do is take and look at the holistic approach to one client, right? So we may see, as officers, I see Jane once, right, every month, but I didn't know 7 other officers are also seeing Jane once a month, and all of a sudden your call volume's really high. So going in and actually checking on them on a regular basis before they call and need assistance really helps to alleviate our call volume in those. And it really gives us the opportunity to dial in exactly what that person may need, whether it's through mental health, through supervision, through the adult protection at Washington County, or if they're having a crisis, what that looks like at the hospital. Sometimes we'll bring somebody up on a crisis call, and we have very limited data, right? This is what we have today. Well, he actually puts together a whole note and then call history into a pamphlet, so when an officer can bring someone up, they can actually hand the doctor a full workup on exactly why that person is here over time, right? So it gives us that opportunity to work with the hospital staff, and these people that need mental health services can maybe get it a little bit quicker if they have more information available to them, and that's what he's been doing a great job. That's Pat Young. So he was a patrol officer. He was one of the 6, and he was moved into that CMU position, which is a great position that we look forward to moving forward. We have 2 rotating detectives. Nick Bailey is a 2-year rotation, and then Ryan Pierre is a 1-year rotation. Ryan fills Dan Schoen's 2-year rotation. So we have 2 officers from the patrol division that go into investigations for 2 years. And every year we pick a new person, so they're constantly rotating through. And that's for career development enhancement, learn something new, take that skill back to the patrol division. And if they go back to the night shift, they may end up writing a warrant and executing the search warrant because they've had that experience for the last 2 years, which is really beneficial, I think, to our organization and for them for career development and enhancement later into supervision if that's what they want to. So those are the big changes. All the officers that we had hired last year are on their own, and it's funny because we did shift bids, and they're all on the same shift. They're all working days. Believe it or not, the last 3 that we hired that went through the academy last year are all working day shift. So it's kind of funny, day or day power. It's weird how the dynamics go on a year-to-year basis where we rotate through where day shift is coveted, and then things change, people have babies, and all of a sudden they want night powers or day powers, whatever works best for them. So that group is on the day shift, which is funny. But 2 of those are experienced officers. One came out of Eau Claire, Wisconsin. He has 11 years of experience, so he's not a new officer. And then one came from St. Paul Park that had over 3.5 years. So combined, they're not really new officers. We have 1 new one. And then the one that's senior has really only been here 2 years. So it's funny, he's senior to the ones that have, it's an interesting dynamic. But so those changes have been made. We're looking forward to that. In addition to that, we had 2 officers that retired. And we have 2 officers starting on February 4th through our academy. So they'll go through the 3-week academy up at the Hero Center and then start on field training. One is Sydney Wiley. She comes to us from the Washington County Sheriff's Office. They're not real happy, but she applied to the police department. She's been a deputy for about a year, but she is a Cottage Grove resident, went to Park, and she's very happy to come back to our community. And the second one is Evan Davick, who is a Cottage Grove resident, Park graduate. He was a part-time coach at the high school for wrestling. And he was on our CSOs for the last 2.5 to 3 years here. So then he got promoted up to officer. Like Rick said, we still have people out on long-term leaves. So we're still short 2 people, and we'll see what happens with those long-term leaves. And we have 2 of our CSOs that are also going through the academy here in February to be on the ready in case job openings occur. They have already completed that initial training with us, so they'll be ready to go. Short of that, call volume has stayed pretty consistent. Everyone reads the media and the newspapers. It's kind of stayed consistent. We're down from what we were with the stolens and the thefts. They seem to have migrated north into Woodbury for whatever reason, and that's just the way it has played out for the last 2 months now, is we were getting hit pretty hard, and for whatever reason now that has moved into Lake Elmo, Hudson, Wisconsin, and the kind of the 94 corridor. So it's kind of where we're at, playing those when they occur and doing our best to make sure this community is safe.
Sounds exciting.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Other than that, I don't have anything unless you have questions for me.
Any questions of the public safety? Thank you. Oh, Councilperson Mr. Olson, would you like to address us at all?
I would love to.
All right.
It truly is my pleasure to be here this evening. I was very excited to be assigned as the liaison to this commission this year, and it's great to see all of you. Thank you for everything that you do to support our city. And, I know many of you sitting there have, worked in a variety of different capacities, and you bring a great deal of knowledge and experience. Bob and Kent, we're going to have a tough time filling those chairs for a year, but we'll figure it out for a year, okay? Couple things I want to just share with you guys tonight from the council packet, and then as always, I'll open it up for questions from you. 574, it's a big number. That's the number of housing permits in the city of Cottage Grove in 2021. So we're not making public safety or public works job any easier because we're giving them a lot more territory to cover. One of the things that we know we need to do with respect to the budget this year is we also need to provide the right resources in terms of equipment, manpower, et cetera, in order to ensure that we keep up with the new stuff, but we also take really good care of the stuff that's already here. And as Chair Ingram mentioned earlier, we have portions of the community that are getting a little bit older in terms of their infrastructure, and we're fully aware of that. That was a very important part of our strategic planning session that we did this year on January 22nd. So we definitely have that in sight. When it comes to resources, one of the things that we often talk about is, do we have enough personnel? Chief Redenius mentioned about the part-time firefighters. One of the things we did here in the last month and a half, 2 months is we passed a pay structure change for part-time fire. We increased pay by about $2 per hour for our part-time firefighters. And also, I don't know if you guys are aware of what we did with full-time, but there were some changes to the para payouts that actually really work in the guys' favor. So we're trying very hard to ensure that we're an employer of choice, and that when people do decide that, hey, I want to get into a career, whether it's EMS or fire or law enforcement or whatever the case might be, we're one of the places that they look for. Very excited to hear Captain Renzel talk about the 4 individuals who are going through the academy. I think that demonstrates the proactive approach that the staff in the city of Cottage Grove has taken with respect to kind of planning for growth, and really that planning for growth piece, and then making sure that we manage that growth is going to be something we have to all keep our eye on over the course of the next several years. A couple things from the council packets that I just wanted to share with you a little bit from January. So if you aren't already aware, there's going to be a lot more information than I can provide you tonight that will be provided by Mayor Bailey on Wednesday night at 6 p.m. when he does his State of the City address, which he'll be doing right here in the council chambers. So pop your popcorn and make sure you tune in. There'll be a lot more that he has to say than I can cover, but one of the things I wanted to talk about is the River Acres residential well sealing project, which I'm sure you guys all talked about. That is done, paid for, everything's buttoned up. That was a very big project, and we're very grateful to have that behind us. We also, as we do every year, we had to designate official newspaper for all of our publications this year, which we did. The Pioneer Press will continue to be our official newspaper, but I think what you'll see is a lot more information coming out through other communication publications, whether it's Cottage Grove Reports or our Facebook page or SWCTC or what have you, because we hired a new communications manager recently, Jen Longacre. And if you guys don't know Jen, she came to us from the state of Minnesota. She worked for the fire marshal. And she also used to be a reporter for the group that owned the South Washington County Bulletin. She was down in Red Wing, but she's got a lot of really good experience, and she's going to be doing some really neat things for us in terms of making sure that we communicate all of the stuff that's going on in the city to people like you and the residents, et cetera. We want to make sure that people are fully aware and fully informed. We also did a couple things with respect to some changes to the way that we're doing business. So at the ice arena, for example, you can now do ticket sales online. That's a new thing. So we're doing some things like that. We also are continuing to look at our ordinances. I don't know if you folks have been made aware of this. Ryan, have you guys talked about that?
Not too much yet.
Okay, so one of the things that we ordered as a council after last year's strategic planning session is a full review of our ordinance books, and here's one of them, and there's more. We asked the staff to take a very robust look at the current ordinances on the books in the city of Cottage Grove so that we could eliminate any that we don't need any longer, eliminate any redundancy, update ordinances that maybe aren't quite in keeping with new law or new guidance from the League of Minnesota Cities. And then, of course, we also want to look at ordinances that apply to modern-day events that the city hadn't had to deal with in the past. So a couple of examples of that might be our food truck ordinance. Food trucks are becoming a more prevalent thing, so we're asking our staff to really take a good hard look at that ordinance and how it should be formulated to ensure that we're business friendly, but we also make sure that we take care of our brick and mortar in addition to those food truck operators. I'm sure you guys have all had the conversation with your neighbors about residential chickens and ducks and those sorts of things. You know, that continues to be something that is in the public's consciousness. There's a lot of communities out there that have made changes to their ordinances with respect to sort of that urban farming, chickens, ducks, et cetera. And Cottage Grove's not immune to having residents who are, you know, deeply invested in that sort of situation for themselves. So we're taking a good hard look at that. We're looking at other people's ordinances. We're looking at the language. We're trying to determine if it is something we want to do, how are we going to do it properly, et cetera. So, you know, there's going to be some heavy lifting with these ordinances, and we've got some workshops lined up over the course of the next couple months, February and March, where on council Wednesdays, 1st and 3rd, we won't have workshops, but on 2nd and 4th Wednesdays, we will have workshops to go through all of the ordinance stuff with the staff, anything that they deem is important enough to talk about, we're going to be there to talk about it. And I think that's a long overdue process, actually, so something we're excited about. And then the last thing that I just wanted to touch on is we did have our strategic planning session on January 22nd. We held it at the Mall of America this year, which was kind of a nice change of pace. We haven't done that before. And it was nice to be able to get everybody into a really, really, you know, big room with all the amenities that you're looking for. And then when you took a break, we actually, you know, had little activities for people to do. But the theme of this year's meeting is, okay, if we've been climbing the mountain on those 574 building permits, what are we going to do now that we're sort of at the peak? How are we going to continue to manage all that? And I can tell you right now, this commission is going to be critical to that because all of you sitting there bring a wealth of experience with regard to infrastructure management and ensuring that, you know, we have the right people in the right places doing the right things at the right times. So we've got a lot of hard work ahead of us. And one thing to look for this year is years ago, we used to do what's called an all-commission meeting. We're going to try to set that up again this year to do an all-commission meeting to bring everybody from all of the various commissions into probably the Hero Center and have a workshop so that we can get all of the input that we need as a council and what staff needs as a staff to ensure that we're thinking about things the right way, we're pursuing things the right way. And I know you guys generally don't have many opinions, but, you know, probably going to need some that night. And with that, I'll stand for questions.
I got a question. Whatever happened to them sending out anything about dog licenses?
About what now?
Dog licenses.
Was there something that was supposed to be sent out?
You always got a notice every year.
Okay.
I don't think last year you could come up here and pay for it, could you?
I know that's being discussed as an ordinance, so I can tell you that we're reviewing that now, and there's some push to do lifetime licensing instead of Like, we went as far as the 3-year license. I think we're kind of moving to that point where we realize that maybe we should just be doing things simpler.
So there's a really good example of why we're having these workshops in February and March.
I think you'll see a lot of these changes. I
I
mean,
think a lot of people wouldn't do it if their dog is like 13, 14 years old.
well, we send, unfortunately, a lot of notices out every year, and we get that phone call saying that their animal passed away. And the last thing we want to do is send letters to people whose animals passed away, reminding them that they need to buy a dog license. It's fairly bad tact, in my opinion, that we could do things better. And I think that we're always striving to look to do that next thing better. So I think that'll be part of the discussion.
Bob, that's a great question, and I'll make sure I bring it up because I wasn't aware. So I appreciate you bringing that forward.
Yeah, because I used to get the letter in the mail every year, and
Okay.
the last 2 years we haven't gotten one.
Yeah, I'll
And
talk
I think
to,
it gave you an option of 1 to 3 years.
yeah, Captain Martin that's her division, so I'll check in with her too. Because I know there's a lot of noise being made up at the front on how they're gonna handle that and how they're making changes, so I just didn't hear it all. I heard it and then went my own way and kind of stood in my
Mine's 12
corner and
years old. I
realized,
don't know if I want a lifetime animal license or not.
all right.
And maybe just a quick comment, because Justin, you said we'd always share our opinions. So
Yes.
as you go through the ordinance, the one recommendation I'd make for the group is to not only look at the ordinances, but then think about how often they should be reviewed. Because it's always a good plan to go and go through them one time and you clean them all up, and then they go back on the shelf, and before you know it, they get outdated. That was the one thing I learned with my service to the school district. We took a lot of time and redid all the policies, but we also set up a rotation then. So on a yearly basis, some of them have to be looked at because of legalities. And there's other ones that maybe it's every 5 years. Some of them could be every 3 years. But you might want to think about that as you're going through it, to put a date on the side of say, every 2 years we should do this one. And that'll help you guys, I think, stay more organized and really keep it moving versus it being this big event that takes a lot of time and energy then.
Yeah, it's good advice. I know the last time we went through the ordinance books was back in 2009. So there's definitely room for improvement in terms of timeliness of going through there. In terms of policies and procedures at the city, that gets reviewed annually, but the ordinance books are so thick and there's so much there that it probably bears some additional scrutiny on a yearly basis just to make sure that we kind of keep up with the times. I think that's where we fall behind, and then it gets to be this big cumbersome project. So I appreciate that. Thank you. Anyone else?
Yeah, I think too, it's noticed that it's going down on your water bills that used to give specific things. Like no parking in the street. I haven't seen that on my water bill for a long time,
Okay.
like in the winter.
Do you think people pay attention to that message?
Probably not.
Yeah. That's what
But
we're,
it's there.
that's what we're tasking,
New people coming into town don't.
right. And that may be something that you just don't know that you don't know it, that somebody somewhere stopped doing it. That's one of the things we're tasking our communications manager with, is she's going through the same process with our communication tactics as we are with the ordinance books, to try to determine if what we're doing works, or do we need to do something differently? Do we need to go back to the way we used to do things? It's a very challenging environment right now to be able to grab people's attention and get them to understand what's going on in the city, et cetera. You think you're touching a lot of people with Facebook or what have you, but turns out not really.
I think something else, Bob, you got to keep in mind is that the younger generation, and I'm going to include myself in this, even though I'm not, we pay our bills online.
Yeah.
It comes online and we click, and.
That's how I do mine, yeah.
Huh? So, I mean, that's,
We still get the water bill in there, but we pay it online.
well, I get mine online too. I don't.
I do
even-
too, I get an email,
get
but
mine.
that's just one of those things where we've had to change the way we do business
Yeah.
to accommodate people who think differently about stuff like that. That's why the whole official newspaper thing is a little weird. We're actually asking our legislative contingent to kind of kick that to the curb, because frankly, the circulation is down so much that you don't really get as many eyeballs on what you're trying to to publish as you used to, and it's more expensive than it ever has been to do it. So we'd like to be able to go to a more social media friendly format, but it's state statute, so we have to continue to do it unless that changes.
I do like that Cottage Grove Journal too.
Oh, good,
Gives me something to do, go to the library and read.
good, fantastic. I'll pass it along.
All right, any other questions of the council at this time? Then I'd like to take just a moment and thank Kent and Bob for their service. Just a little, you guys started in, Bob, you started in March 1st of 2016 was your first appointment, and you're going to be officially off of this thing at 2/28 of 2022. So can we get a meeting for the 21st, so they have to come back one more time? And then Kent, you're also the same. You were put on March 1st of 2016, and you will officially be done on the 28th of February. Thanks for the 5 years, 6 years, 7 years, 5 years, 6 years.
Yeah, whatever it was.
It's
Yeah.
been a while.
Yeah,
anyway,
that's right.
And
Who's gonna take our place at the?
I don't know.
Can I volunteer for that one?
You can volunteer for that. And at that moment,
I need my brat.
okay, then I'd like to move for adjournment.
So moved.
I second it.
We got a move and a second, and they do remember the criteria. They had to do it, so. Any discussion? Motion, meeting's adjourned.
Thank you, guys. Thank you for the plan.